What air was it here, London, or
when you're ready, you're going to increase the. I don't need to do it. When you're ready.
yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But then I realized, like, I started in and then we wanted to just finish up on the Hi everyone, so my name is Cherin Chung. I'm a PhD candidate serving as the president of the Society of Graduate Students, and I'll be your moderator today. As the Ontario provincial election approaches on February 27th, this public debate will provide students and community members an opportunity to hear directly from candidates about their policies and plans for addressing key student concerns, including the cost of living and environmental sustainability. Attendees will have the opportunity to engage with candidates and gain insights into their platforms ahead of elections today. So our confirmed participants include Terence Kernaghan from the New Democratic Party, Dyck from the Green Party, and Tariq Khan from the Liberal Party. The Conservative Party candidate, Jerry Fribble, declined the invitation to participate. This debate is organized entirely by graduate students at Western University. It was made possible through the efforts of our Sustainability Committee, our Sustainability Coordinator, Ehsan Ur Rahman Mohammed, former Sustainability Coordinator, Brendan Samuel, and our Vice President Advocacy, Jasmine Proctor. They have diligently organized and prepared the questions for discussion. We would also like to extend our sincere thanks to our Vice President of Student Services, Tariq Khan, and to the staff whose support has been invaluable. So just to start off, for each of the candidates, what is something about each of the other candidates on this stage that you admire? Oh.
Well, I'd like to begin, I really admire the way in which Carol is able to deliver her remarks. Oftentimes, she uses constructions which are quite effective. Her factory call is excellent, and really provides a very academic perspective on a number of different things. And so I very much appreciate hearing Carol say.
Thank you, Terence. Well, I've run against Terence 3 times, and so we know each other quite well. And I will say with Terence, he's a very good person. He also came out to, I was the chair of the Magisterial Soloists, and we got a Trillium Foundation. And I will say a very nice moment we shared together was sitting and listening to the music and appreciating it together. So I've got to appreciate someone who also loves classical music. And for Tariq, we sat on the Trees and Forests Advisory Committee together. And I have to appreciate anybody who is interested in environmental issues and sustainability.
Yeah.
And thank you. And because I'm a new face in this political era, but let me tell you, I haven't seen such a friendly faces, especially when you are in debates. So all credit goes to Terence and my ex-colleague, Dyck. And let me tell you, Jerry is also our friend, but he thinks that, this is not worth to come and talk to you.
Thank you so much. So for the first question, can you share your vision on how your party will make life for students more affordable? What specifically will you change and why?
Should ask, how long do we have to answer questions? I'm used to giving speeches that sometimes last an hour, so I need to have a frame of reference, otherwise.
Or use a timer.
About 2 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for that. First and foremost, housing is incredibly critical and important for students. I was really proud to have brought forward legislation to bring back rent control, to make sure that we plug the hole of vacancy decontrol, that unwritten incentive for bad landlords to kick good tenants out because they know they can jack up the rent. What my legislation would have done would make it so that you pay what the last person paid. There would also be a landlord registry so that we, weed out some of those unethical, bad landlords. But also I brought forward legislation for the government to get back into the business of building housing. Post-World War II, the government realized it had a social and an economic incentive to create housing for returning war veterans. So the Homes for Heroes program was born, the small strawberry box homes. And by looking after the greatest generation, which gave rise to the baby boomer generation, you think about the economic prosperity that was realized because of that home ownership. The government got out of the business of building housing in the mid-90s, leaving it largely up to the private market. The private market isn't going to make the housing that people need or require. So as students, I see a lot of folks who've been exploited by bad landlords, not necessarily knowing their rights. But we also need to make sure that we turn student loans into grants. As a former educator, I saw so many kids who had all of the passion, all of the desire, all of the ability to pursue post-secondary education. If you're not born in the right place with the right last name, you may not get the chance to go on. That is a shame on our society for not supporting more students to get post-secondary education.
Okay, so I'm speaking to you today also as a graduate student here at Western. I'm in my 4th year doing my PhD in law. And I also see things on the other side because my husband is the chair of the philosophy department and he has acted as the grad chair and as the undergrad chair. So a lot of the issues we're going to be discussing this afternoon are ones that we talk about at our dinner table all the time because he knows the struggles of the students. And of course, as a grad student, I know the struggles that the other students are facing on a day-to-day basis, whether it's like trying to pay for your rent or trying to pay for your food. The Green Party platform includes a lot of provisions that make life affordable for everyone, and this includes students. The first thing, of course, as Terence has mentioned, we are going to turn the OSAP loans into grants, and we want to invest more in OSAP. We also want to make sure for those students who are also on disability, there isn't clawbacks because there are students, people that are now on disability, and they get clawbacks for the OSAP. It's not enough that they could actually go to school and find a new career. We want to make food more affordable. Right now, we've got a situation where the big players are basically gouging us. So we want to pass anti-collusion and anti-gouging legislation to make sure that the big grocery store owners aren't hiking up the prices and increasing costs. And then finally, also for housing, we want to put rent controls in, but also create a lot of housing because the more housing we have, that is going to increase the supply and therefore the demand will go down and rents will go down. We need a variety of homes in the town, in our city, and there's a lot of creative ways that we can do that. I'm going to pass on because it's so hard to know when we're supposed to be done.
Still have 15 seconds.
15 seconds, okay.
Thank you very much. If I'm getting correctly, you are talking about the affordability or the housing, because for me, these are two different subjects.
So it's affordability for students.
Okay.
You can speak to whichever.
I got it, because in a political, things, we mix up, so many things, so I just wanted to be clear what I'm talking. Affordability, yes, I have 3 stories in my house. 2 kids, one went to university and 2 went to Queens. My son has started his career in family medicine with a debt of $325,000. He has just started his life with this debt. And we were talking about the OSAP. He was not entitled to have an OSAP. Okay, we need to revamp this system from middle class perspective as well. My other 2 daughters, they went to Kingston. And the rent was, can you imagine, $1,000 plus the utilities, and our dad has to travel from London to Kingston to fill their groceries every 15 days. I have gone through this torture in last 4 or 5 years, traveling here and coming back the same night, same day. So affordability is a challenge. There was a time when students used to have good education, and then hard work. That was the recipe to success. This is no more. My daughter, she is GPA 4. You can very easily connect, and she is the topper, but she was not able to get any job, like as per her qualification. We need to look from students' perspective. When I was like in your age, we knew that where we are, where we will be in next few years. But in last 7 years, nothing. They destroyed everything because education is not their priority at all.
Thank you so much. It sounds to me like there is a lot of consensus, a lot of loans, and a lot of affordable housing for students with all 3 parties. My second question is, I'll give a little bit of context. So in September 2024, the federal government announced a further 10% reduction of international student permits for 2025 and 26, in addition to the 35% cap. The most recent announcement no longer exempts graduate students and imposes further restrictions and limitations. Minister Miller has stated that we need to support international students and make sure that they're set up for success. So my question to you is, what will you do to ensure that we are supporting highly qualified international graduate students at Canada's top research-intensive universities?
No, it's up to their discussion.
Yeah. If you'd like to.
Sure, I'll
Yeah,
start.
for sure.
I want to start first by saying that I did 3 master's degrees, and in each of my master's degrees, there was highly international, and students learn from each other when they are coming from different countries. In my last master's degree, we had students from every single continent except Antarctica, and I can tell you it was the richest experience that I had. The situation that we have right now, that they are putting the caps on the foreign students, is because they created this problem. And the way they created this problem, particularly in Ontario, is by underfunding the universities, severely underfunding the universities because they don't prioritize post-secondary education. This meant that a number of universities obviously became dependent on foreign students for that revenue, but then they left them, and now they're using them as sort of the blame point. That is not the way it should be. So number one, we need to invest a lot more in our universities. In our platform, we want to increase investments for all students by 20%. But we have to do more than that because we have to rebuild the programs that we currently have. We have to make sure that we've got more professors that are there so the programs don't close. For the international students coming here is incredibly difficult because they also have problems trying to work. So they're already paying more. Maybe the dollar is more expensive for them than for their own currency. So they're finding it very difficult to keep up all their studies and be able to work and afford food. They have said that international students in particular are visiting food banks even more often than others. So we have to make sure that, again, with the affordability crisis, we can offer better food. We need to support the international students. We have to recognize that they bring an incredible value to the universities. And we have to make sure, absolutely, for all students, that we increase investments by 20% so that we are building our universities rather than watching them suffer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dyck. I will not repeat your point, Dora, one. So, let me give you slightly a different perspective. Post-secondary education, the universities and the colleges. And there is a very interesting scenario here. Last year, universities in totality, out of 23, let's say top 10, they are in deficit, 1 billion. And the colleges, 24 colleges plus 500 colleges, which became immigration centers, they are exactly 1 billion plus. So there is something wrong with the system, and system was working fine 7 years ago. Then Doug Ford came and he destroyed everything from the basis. So what is our plan is? Our plan is straight to the point, no catchy slogans, no empty promises. We are going to cap 10% as international students, but we are going to uncap domestic students. And then we are going to boost funding to the post-secondary education, specifically universities, to bring it at par with the national average. And sometimes you will see few universities will get more. For example, Queen's University, I mean, they are forced to close their department, like just for $35 million deficit, and their total deficit is $273 million. And Doug Ford is talking about $100 billion tunnel. Come on, I mean, look at their priorities. So we are going to fix this. And another thing, we are also going to revamp our OSAP system. Thank you.
We have seen a situation in Ontario where we are Canada's richest province, and yet for decades, we have had the lowest post-secondary funding of any province. So much so that for the longest time, we would have had to increase expenditures by 43.5% simply to be second last. That's how badly we're scraping the bottom of the barrel for decades. Doug Ford has made it far worse because he enacted his tuition freeze and then expected institutions to make up that cost without providing them the proper funding. You know, we follow the experts. OCUFA as well as UOFA are requesting 11.75% increase over 5 years. This is the kind of funding that we need, and that will not even bring us to average. So we have to ask ourselves the question, you know, why have we allowed, or why has the province forced universities to become more like a business when that is not their mandate, that is not their ethos, that is not the way that they're meant to behave? We also see, you know, that universities have had to rely on international students like a revenue stream. It's so entirely dehumanizing to think that institutions became addicted to them, almost like a drug, so much so that when the federal government cut it off, look at what has happened. But because we're denying those international students their opportunity to become educated here, we're also going to be removing opportunities from domestic students. Universities have also long had contract faculty, simply, you know, these hired guns who have to go contract to contract without benefits, without job security. We met someone the other day who had taught 19 different courses. Can you imagine? And then this individual also had no contract to go to. This is something where we are not contributing to the entire fabric of the university. We need to make sure that there's room for international students, more room by removing the caps for domestic students, but also ensuring that we have the long-term good faculty jobs for the arts and humanities, because oftentimes those are the ones that are cut the first and the hardest.
Thank you very much. So for the next question, it will come to you, Tariq. What are your views on the current provincial government's approach to environmental sustainability?
Current government approach or my approach?
What are your thoughts to the current approach?
I mean, environment is not their priority. The priority is something we put something environment is not in their radars at all. So they are talking always cement and steel. They are not even thinking that, okay, there may be environment friendly, like so many measures they can adopt, but they are focused on cement and steel, tunnels, Highway 413, and then for the more highways, we need to change this mindset. And we are branded as an environment friendly party. But let me tell you, we are not going to impose carbon tax on consumers. So rest assured. So don't mix. But we are going to control emissions by any means because we prefer that environment is the first. And you know what? Highway 413 project was cancelled back in 2008 by the Liberals just because it was not environment friendly. So we are not concerned that how much cement or steel we will lose, but we will protect our environment at every level. We will promote rail. We will try to restore abundant rail tracks all over Ontario. And we will try to promote our transit system. We will boost funding and we will electrify our whole transit system. When I was commissioner at London Transit, we tried to do it and we were able to secure funding from the federal government and the province. And then 2022, our tenure was done and now everything is reset.
Thank you very much.
The NDP is really the party of housing, and we also have to look at the earth as being more broadly our house for everyone. And if it is not a healthy, vibrant place, then none of us will be able to build a life. With the current government, we've seen some very bizarre backwards approaches. I mean, they canceled contracts, which weren't the greatest contracts. They did often benefit multinational corporations. But they were at the expense of the environment. We saw them rip out fully created charging stations from GO stations. I mean, who does that? This was a functioning resource that was working, and because of their ideology, they ripped it out. We also see them talking about ripping up bike lanes, when we know that 40% of landfills right now is construction waste. Why would you take something that is working perfectly? It is a viable alternative for active transport that people have wanted and people have voted for, and then to simply throw it all away. It is beyond belief. You know, in the chamber, I don't think that they even like to use the words climate change because I don't know that suits their party ideology. We have to take all of these things incredibly seriously. We cannot be creating more highways. Look at Los Angeles, for heaven's sakes. You build more highways, you have more cars. So instead, we need better regional transport. For years and years and years, we were promised high-speed rail in southwestern Ontario. And see where that is? Neither do I. But what we did have GO Transit, which was sort of doomed to fail from the beginning. It was a 4-hour trip, back and forth, 4-hour trip one way to Toronto. And in 2022, just before the election, I still have the receipts, by the way. They said that if a re-elected Doug Ford government would invest an additional $160 million in GO Transit to increase speed and frequency of the GO rail line. Not even a month after that election, it was gone. So we need to make sure that we are not only protecting our environment, getting people out of cars, and looking for ways that we can all contribute.
Okay, so the current government has 3 things for their environmental policies, and that's abysmal, short-sighted, and dangerous. And in a nutshell. So, really, the problem that we see first is that they are completely gutting any kind of environmental regulation. So they have taken away the powers of the conservation authorities. That power must be returned back to the conservation authorities immediately. They are the ones that protect us from situations like flooding. Last year, we had the big flooding here in Ontario. That cost the province $4 billion, and that was for just 3 hours worth of rain. This is going to get worse, especially if we are going to be building more highways and encouraging more cars to go on to onto the highways instead of actually taking them off the highway. So we've already heard about rail, and we also need to have regional transportation on buses between the areas and the rural areas. But the most important thing is we have to protect our land. And right now, we have a lot of our green space that is threatened by these highways, but also by urban sprawl, because the current government is trying to take away the regulations to prevent the cities going out into the countryside. So we want to remove those so that you're going to be building within the cities. There will be no 400 series highways in the agricultural area. We also want to create a blue belt. So we have a green belt, but a blue belt to protect our wetlands, because we have lost, certainly in southwestern Ontario, over 95% of our wetlands. And we also need a food belt to protect our agricultural land, which is important both for food security, but also for protecting our green space. And more than that, the government also got rid of our environmental commissioner a few years back. We need that environmental commissioner back, because without that oversight, we are going to keep having these problems happening in the future.
So as a bit of a follow-up, my next question, and I will just announce each candidate will now have 1 minute, just so that we can accommodate some more questions.
Lightning round.
So if you were elected to represent London North Centre and the same government continues to hold power, what steps would you take to ensure that those in positions of authority remain accountable for their decisions, particularly regarding climate change and sustainability efforts in the province?
I was really proud that we as the NDP got Doug Ford to reverse his ridiculous decision to parcel off the green belt. It was an odious situation, and I must mention that even though we're in this election right now and he's saying it's about Donald Trump, it's not, people. It's bait and switch. He is trying to hide from the fact that he's currently under, in the Premier's office, our CMP investigation for corruption in relation to the Greenbelt scandal. We brought this forward to the Integrity Commissioner, and suddenly all those deals started to fall through. This is something that we absolutely are, proud to champion. We want to make sure that we have a government that is not only ethical, responsible, but is also spending money properly. When you see a government that has given $400 per household to an Austrian spa, they gifted $1 billion to the foreign owners of the 407 for nothing. And now we're talking about buying back the 407, which is something the official opposition had brought forward, Doug Ford voted against, and now suddenly what's old is new again.
Thank you so much.
Okay, the best way to deal with this is to make sure that it's their voters, the people that support them, that are not happy. And so the Green Party multiple times, like when we've had the Science Center and other issues, have gone out door to door talking to people about the problems that are happening. And I can tell you that there are so many conservatives out there that are not happy with what's going on. And we collect their signatures and we get the petitions and we get them out there. Right now, the biggest situation in Ontario is that we see that most of the rural areas go blue, but there is a shift happening because the rural areas are realizing that they've been completely abandoned by the PC government. So if you were elected MPP and you realize the only way to get them to start listening, they don't want to lose those rural ridings. So you got to get out there and start talking to those farmers, start talking to them about how they're going to lose their agricultural land. They understand that they're stewards of the land. They understand that they actually play a huge role in addressing climate change. And so the best way to make sure that Doug Ford changes the way he's going to do things is by making sure he knows his voters don't support him.
I've been a member on Environment Advisory Committee for the City of London back in fall 2016. And environment is very close to my heart. Now there are two scenarios, Feb 28. Doug Ford goes home and we take his place. For sure, everything will be 180 degree environment towards the environment friendly things. Scenario B, Doug Ford still there and we go as opposition. There is a hope. Liberals are still in the federal government, and I have a promises, even from our upcoming leader, Mark Harding, and our two Liberal MPs, that they will try their level best to inject as much as they can into London North Centre. for environment related projects and the initiatives.
Thank you. For students who might be new to Ontario's provincial politics, what do you think is the best way for them to understand what's truly at stake in this election? With so many important issues on the table, including healthcare, education, and climate change, how can they navigate through the information to make an informed decision? And what resources or approaches would you recommend for them to engage with the political process and better grasp how these decisions will impact their future?
Okay. For me, I think it's always important that you reach out to your candidates directly and pose questions to them. Your MPP should always be accessible to you. So when I'm knocking on doors, I always tell every person, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I answer all my own emails. I'll get back to you within 24 hours, which is why we don't sleep so much. So that is the first stop, because it's not just about the party, it's about the person who is actually going to represent you. They are the person that you are going to reach out to when you are having a problem. The second thing I would say is check out all the parties and what they are focusing on. Look at the debates. A debate is obviously a great way to find out more about your candidates. So for instance, we've been telling people there's the Rogers debate. You can see it online. Again, unfortunately, the Conservative candidate isn't there, but you get a good idea of where your candidates stand. And then check the platforms out for the different parties. Definitely, this is where you need to see the top issues that they're each prioritizing. And right now we can see that healthcare, housing, affordability, and it's good to see where each is standing on those issues.
Let me start with this. I started my career talking with the youngsters. I started as a lecturer for the computer science, and I love talking with people. At this moment, over 2 million youngsters in Ontario, and Ontario is the highest in terms of unemployment. This is a shame, and this happened again in last 7 years. Now, I was talking with my daughter in last 2022 elections, and I was saying, can you vote Dr. Kate Graham? And she said, Baba, you don't have to tell me. I went through their platforms and I went for voting in 2018 for the NDP, but at this moment, I'm going to vote Kate Graham. Unfortunately, she was not able to do it, but this is the information or like kids are youngsters are well informed. They are on certain. Okay, sorry.
You know, oftentimes young folks are blamed for not voting, and there's a lot of castigation and a lot of negativity and a lot of frustration from folks. But I think the problem is actually with politicians themselves. I think politicians need to inspire people to vote. William Butler Yeats said, education is not the filling of a bucket, but it's the lighting of the fire. Instead, we should be igniting people's passion towards how important it is to vote. Myself, I come to politics naturally. I'm a member of the 2S LGBTQI+ community. My basic human rights would not be here if it weren't for good government. We also thought that a woman's right to choose was an inalienable right, but we've seen with different movements in the United States that clearly it is not. We all depend on politics for our safety, for good government, for a proper environment. We depend on it in so many different ways. So I think it's a matter of not being angry with folks for not voting, but trying to lead out of them that passion, that interest, that desire. You know, I'm really proud that the Ontario NDP has passed the most 2S LGBTQI+ positive legislation. We've also created the most affordable housing and supportive housing. Some of those still exist to this day.
My next question to you is, how do you and your party plan to strengthen the enforcement mechanism of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act to ensure greater accountability and meaningful progress in achieving a fully accessible product?
Okay. This is one of my topic I have been dealing in my life. AODA Act 2005, right? And the cutoff for every municipality to adopt this 100% was last year. And I can send you the links that city staff was on a media that they will not be able to achieve the targets because province was not cooperating with them. Why province was not cooperating with them? They were busy doing something else. Okay, green belt or the spa or those things. But it was the primary job of opposition to get the job done. AODA is 2005. And after 20 years, we are not still able to comply with. As soon as we come into the power, 2005 was the Liberals. We will restore it right away.
The problem from the beginning with the AODA was that it was legislation without teeth. If you do not make the penalties greater than the cost to actually implement the change, then people aren't going to implement the change. It's a business decision. So it was flawed from the very beginning. And that's deeply problematic. We have to make sure that there is an incentive. You know, I'm not fond of a government that has all of these draconian measures, but we have to make sure that people are actually making the change. We see that Doug Ford doesn't care for people living with disabilities and people with accessibility issues. Most recently, he spoke about people who are on Ontario Disability Support Program and said that they were sitting at home watching the Flintstones. People who are disabled don't ask to be disabled. And that neoliberal idea that everyone can just pull up their socks and work harder and everyone can succeed is an absolute myth. And it dehumanizes folks who might have become injured, who might have congenital, all sorts of different issues. And it's quite frightening and quite dehumanizing. I don't want to get angry and start swearing, so I better pass the microphone on.
Yeah, so we can see with the government over the last 20 years that it clearly was not a priority to make the province more accessible. And part of that is, again, a lack of funding put towards those areas. So we've already said in our platform that we are going to fully support making Ontario accessible as soon as possible and make sure that there is more funding in that area. But it is, again, what Terence is saying, this problem, and Tariq said as well, this problem of prioritizing certain issues that are for profit for the government, rather than actually having a government that is caring. And what we really need right now is a government that actually cares for people and puts people before profit. So if we think about $2 billion that is going to be going for a mega spa that is private, that is not where our tax dollars should be going. Our tax dollars should be going towards making sure that we have an accessible province. It should also be going towards doubling ODSP and doubling Ontario Works. So this is where we should be spending our tax dollars, caring for people that are on disability, not mocking them.
Thank you very much. For the following question, it is two parts, so each candidate will have 2 minutes to speak. Ontario's healthcare system is facing a growing shortage of family doctors. What specific strategies will you implement to increase the supply of family doctors and ensure that all Ontarians have access to primary care? Additionally, with ongoing concerns about the challenges within the system, such as wait times and resource shortages, what do you identify as the root causes of these issues?
First and foremost, our family health guarantee would see us hiring 3,500 more family physicians. We also take our recommendations from the Ontario Medical Association, who have indicated that family physicians are spending 20 hours per week doing paperwork. Someone with that high level of education ought to be seeing patients, not spending their time on administrative tasks. So by employing a medical scribe or using AI, it would free up spots for 20 more patients per day, and also 2 million more spots for people across Ontario. Right now, the deficit is 2.5 million Ontarians without a family physician. We also need to make sure that within the hospital system, we don't accept hallway healthcare. It was something that was brought in under the Liberal government, and LHSC actually had to have a hallway bed protocol for their standards for actually placing someone in a hallway. We have not seen the number of nurses per capita that we need. We have seen pay freezes on them for easily 12 years under the last government. Then there was Bill 124 with this government, which demeaned and forced people out of the profession. We would pay nurses what they are worth. We would make sure that there's a healthcare human resources strategy, so those who are specialized in certain areas of nursing are going to the right departments. But we'd also want to make sure that we're bringing back the nurses who have left. We need to make sure that there are proper pay, proper incentives. And one thing I will rail on and on and on about is that we can't just look at the acute care sector. We have to look at all different domains of healthcare as ones that are interrelated, whether that's primary care, home care, long-term care, and then acute care. There should not be a pay scale where nurses are paid less in home and community care, slightly more in long-term care, and then the gold standard of acute care. A nurse is a nurse is a nurse, a healthcare worker is a healthcare worker is a healthcare worker. We need to bridge that pay equity gap, and we need to make sure that the government is investing in healthcare properly. We don't have nearly enough hospital beds in the province of Ontario.
So I first want to say, I invite you all to check out the Green Party platform. We are the only party with a fully costed platform at this moment, and there's a large section that has to do with healthcare. We're very much about evidence-based solutions, and that means, just like Terence said, going and talking to the Ontario Medical Association, and I personally have spoken to people that are involved in recruiting doctors. We have a number of ways that we can make quick changes that won't cost the government any money, but will bring more doctors here to Ontario. So we also have the same plan to get 3,500 doctors to Ontario in the next 5 years. And the way to do that, quick fixes are, at the moment, the United States will put out their residency offers before Canada. That means that there's a lot of doctors, potential doctors, that will accept those first because they're afraid they won't get another offer. That means that they head to the United States rather than staying in Canada. So we think it'd be very quick to just change that and have Canada come out with their residency offers first. At the moment, I know that the OMA is also trying to recruit doctors back from the United States into Canada by saying your credentials work here, please come back. But the number one thing that we need to do is actually start investing in healthcare. At the moment, the Ford government is purposefully underfunding healthcare because he wants to move it to privatization. If we were to cancel the 413, that would save us $10 billion. If we were to cancel the mega spa, that's $2 billion. Together, that's $12 billion, and that will bring Ontario up to just the average of the rest of the country in terms of healthcare. We would much rather see healthcare and not highways at the moment. We also have to make sure that we are supporting doctors so that they will become family doctors. And at the moment, as Terence mentioned, they spend about 40% of their time on administrative work, which is when they should be seeing patients. We have a number of ideas to have AI, but also centralized systems for doing referrals. Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Under Doug Ford's watchful eyes and under opposition's support, Doug Ford, 11,000 people died just waiting for the results of their diagnostic tests or the surgeries. 100 ERs closed all over Ontario. Out of 440 municipalities in Ontario, 50%, about 50%, they don't have any primary care doctor. I have 2 doctors in my home, both are family doctors. They share horrible stories with me. Have you heard, I hope everybody must have seen the CBC story about Walkerton, what happened in Walkerton. It's a charge sheet on previous government and the opposition. Now, how to fix it? I have written some portions of health policy of Liberal Party Ontario. I can talk hours and hours on that. Initially, we are going to allocate $3.1 billion to meet with the demands. We are short of 3,100 doctors, and it will take time to bring all these 3,100 doctors. How we are going to expedite this? We are going to induct 1,200 doctors, internationally trained, who are driving Ubers. We need, at least in the next 7 years, we need 33,000 nurses. With 1 billion, you can employ 13,000 nurses. We will require 53,000 PSWs. We have a funding for that. We have calculated each and every dollar. You can ask me after this, because this is not a 2-minute question. Thank you.
In light of ongoing tariff disputes, how do you plan to protect essential goods from becoming more costly for Canadians? Additionally, given the potential threats to Canada's sovereignty and economic stability, particularly in the face of actions by international leaders, how do you intend to foster unity across party lines to effectively address these challenges and safeguard the interests of all Canadians?
Okay. First off, we shouldn't even be having this election right now. The four parties should have been working together right now in the face of the threats. This is a waste of $190 million when we should be unified, especially because we currently have a lame duck prime minister. I would absolutely love to see all four parties working together. We need that to be a much more resilient Ontario. We know that the next 4 years are going to be crazy and we're never going to know what to expect, especially because it's all in the mind of one person who seems a bit unhinged. What you need to do, a little unhinged. So what we need to do is not hitch our star to the United States like Doug Ford is trying to do right now. That is not what we need to do. What we need to do is diversify our trade, look out to other countries, but we also need to work across the provinces to reduce our our barriers there.
So let me start with this. And again, this is my, I'm talking from my experience. This is a more of balloon than the reality. I tell you, we respect our Southern fellows, but we will be better off if we will diversify this. So what's our contingency plan? We do have a contingency plan. We are going to reduce income tax from a small to medium scale businesses, 50%. We are going to boost funding through a special fund, which will reduce relying upon the things coming from South. Frankly speaking, Canada is much more richer than we think. And this is the South which have been pressing us to exploit our own resources. This is a blessing in disguise. And they will be, okay, thank you.
We should be the legislature right now passing job protection. We should be making sure that folks who are in trade exposed industries are not subject to threats from these tariffs. This is a real and present danger. We've seen Doug Ford's record on jobs as abysmal. When GM in Oshawa was ready to pull up stakes, he refused to meet with them. He said, and I quote, "That ship has sailed." We, along with the NDP, fought with the workers, maintained Oshawa GM plant. In addition, Alstom, which creates the Ontario Line subway cars, has a Canadian content provision of 25%. It's low. Doug Ford, he went lower. It's now 10%. So we need to make sure that all procurement from the Ontario government is based on buying from Ontario. Additionally, we need to follow the recommendations of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, remove interprovincial trade barriers, and we need to seek out new trading partners. We need to remove the risk cap on the risk management program because the agriculture industry is particularly exposed, and that's really vital for us in the London area because we're the center of agri-food production.
Thank you so much. Coming back to the theme of accessibility, with the rollback of DEI initiatives in the United States and the potential for similar shifts here in Canada, how do you plan to safeguard the employment rights of minority groups and ensure that their voices are heard and respected in the workplace?
No, I'm from the minority group. So let me give you hope again. Whatever happening in South is not going to affect us because we are more united. Now we think that we should be more independent. We should have our own policy. We should have our own vision. Again, this is a blessing in disguise. Thank you, Mom. Elon Musk and Trump to wake us up. And we are going to stand behind each and every worker, each and every blue collar, each and every white collar, each and every paper pusher, each and every student, each and every professional in any field. Let's see what happens. Let's see what they are coming, what they put on our table, and we will deal accordingly. Don't worry.
What is happening in the United States right now is a rollback on human rights on a variety of fronts, and the blaming and shaming and the scapegoating of folks for, accidents that happen, saying that that was a result of DEI is deeply disturbing. During times of economic crisis, it is so unfortunate when populist politicians try to get everyone to punch downwards. And what does that say about our human condition, that as soon as we feel disempowered, that we seek for somebody else to exert power over? I don't think that's Canadian value, and I don't think any of you in this room think it is either. I think it's actually time that we make sure that we are buttressing employment standards to make sure that there is equal pay for equal work. There used to be groundbreaking legislation in Ontario, which was the Pay Equity Act, and there was the Pay Equity Commission. Women still earn 87 cents on the dollar. Why is that? Why can't we be a place like Iceland, which makes businesses responsible for posting what they pay women for equal work, and if they do not pay them equally, then there is a fine. That way, there's no infractions and there is equity.
So our platform actually addresses this issue and has an entire section just on DEI and also empowering people. So I'm going to pick just one way that we plan on empowering people that would have knock-on effects. And that is making sure that there is more representation within government. If you have a wide variety of voices in government, people with different experiences, different lived experiences, different races, different languages, different sexualities, then we will be making sure that we are safeguarding those rights. But if our government starts to become homogenized, that is when those threats are, the threats are going to become greater. So we have a program to really make sure that we are ensuring that everybody, the voices get heard from multiple people so that we can protect areas like school, jobs, and healthcare is where we see a lot of discrimination.
So remaining on the topic of DEI, as privatization in healthcare and education remains a concern, how will you balance this with the need to protect and promote equity, diversity, and inclusivity, ensuring that vulnerable communities are not marginalized or left behind in these essential sectors?
I think it's important that we take past behavior as a predictor of future behavior. It was the past Liberal government that privatized home care. And they said it was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. There was going to be competition. It was going to be better, faster, cheaper. And we see a disaster in the home care sector right now. And we also see an exploitation of PSW folks who are internationally trained. They're not paid nearly enough. They do wonderful work, but they are not able to build that relationship with people, because when care and profit compete with one another, profit always wins. It is a disgrace that we've allowed any privatization to happen anywhere in our healthcare field. The United States has been looking at our healthcare system and salivating over it for years. It was the NDP that brought public healthcare to Canada, and that's why Tommy Douglas is still widely recognized as the greatest Canadian. People used to lose their shirt, they would lose the farm, they would lose their families because of healthcare costs. And we're going back in that direction as Doug Ford ends up privatizing our treasured public healthcare system. He's spending so much money on these folks.
So again, this is an issue that has to do with funding, and again, chronic underfunding, particularly with the goal of privatizing, whether it's privatizing education or whether it's privatizing healthcare. And we do know that as we start to see privatization, then we are going to see people, we're going to see less DEI within that area. So the first thing we have in our plan is that for education alone, there will be an increase of $1,500 per student. So to get back to the $3 billion of cuts that were made, that means that there will be more services and more help within schools. It means that there will be more mental health support. Often we find that those kids that are too LGBTQ+, are the ones that are having mental health care struggles, and yet they're not getting the help that they need within school. So that's one way that would help. The other way is to have mental health care covered by OHIP. Again, those that are struggling with issues of identity are going to be. We need a.
Privatization of our welfare state. Thank you, Margaret Thatcher, to introduce this idea back in 1985, and that was the blunder. So when we talk about the marginalized communities, I can talk hours and hours on that. Think about, you are from a marginalized community, and the biggest barrier is the communication. You cannot communicate. I've been in touch directly with those marginalized communities, and I have so many experience and stories from them. There is a community living in just east of Adelaide. They were brought in as a result of earthquake, and those were the elderly people. And I still, yesterday I was talking with them that they still face so many hurdles, so many barriers to go into a mainstream, and their kids is the same.
As artificial intelligence continues to rapidly evolve, many universities are beginning to integrate AI technologies into their curricula and research initiatives. How do you envision Ontario's universities embracing AI in both educational and research settings? Considering the growing investment in AI in countries like the United States and France, what steps will you take to ensure that Ontario remains competitive in this field, while also implementing effective regulatory frameworks to address ethical concerns, privacy issues, and potential societal impact? Each candidate has 2 minutes.
2 minutes. This is going to be 2 minutes on a topic I basically know nothing about. My apologies. I am, yes, my kids regularly mock me because I am not so digitally aware. Well, mainly, I think the thing is that we want to make sure that Ontario is going to remain competitive. So there is a number of issues that we can see that are going to be problematic with AI. We see that AI can be used for misinformation. We see that it can be used to create videos of people saying things that they actually did not say. So we're going to need a lot of oversight to actually protect people's rights going forward. I think that's the top thing that we have to deal with, is making sure that we are keeping pace. And that is difficult because, as we know, AI and other technologies are evolving so quickly that it's very difficult for us to catch up. By the time you've got a law, something has changed already. So I think that the top thing will be to get some kind of a task force that is going to work on this issue, particularly in the area of rights. But at the same time, we need to be, again, investing in our universities so that we can be at the leading edge of this technology and how it can actually help us. So we did touch on this before, that AI could be used for doctors. It is a way that they could get their notes written for them so that they do not have to spend 40% of their time taking notes. I know already in the law field, which I'm in, it is being used to draft contracts, because that is something that is just, a mundane thing to do. So you can use it to draft contracts and other things like that. So there are opportunities, and we have opportunities where we can be at the front edge of that, but that's going to mean that our government is actually going to have to invest in businesses. And at the moment, one of the things that we want to do is create a fund because of the problems that are going to be happening with the tariffs. And part of that is going to be protecting jobs that could be hit by tariffs, or people that are going to lose work because of small business. These are areas that we could be investing because, of course, Canada isn't as competitive as the United States, and we could get our own.
Yeah. Again, being a mathematician by my basic qualification and software developer, I speak on cybersecurity, technology, and policy, specifically in the government sector. And we can talk on this. My daughter, she is doing master's PhD in AI. When we talk about the AI is not a complete sort of a subject. It is being portrayed as like we use we heard about, at the start of 2K, that, oh, everything will be going down and everything will be, the planes will stop, running or flying. So AI is again, one of the software, which is booming just because of our processor speed. But, there are technologies to control those technologies as well. So don't be afraid of, but as soon as we come into the government, we are going to legislate and we are going to revamp our 1893 Telecom Acts or 1947 Telecom Acts. So those will be compatible with the upcoming challenges, and the universities and the research centers will be our primary source to draft those things because they are more current than the politicians.
The Khan Academy is a brilliant educational leader, which is doing some fascinating work with how AI can be deployed within a classroom. Students are using AI, and what the teacher is then able to do is to look through all of what they have been searching for, but the AI, what it will do is, while it does provide the answer, will actually begin to ask them questions after the fact to help with that brain-based learning, the creation of the myelin sheets. But what concerns me about AI is that AI is a distillation of some of the most negative human traits. It is inherently sexist, racist, homophobic, and all of these sorts of things. And so what we need to make sure is that AI, first and foremost, cannot replicate itself without the creator's knowledge and awareness, which is one concern. But number two, that it is deliberately and intentionally encoded with our basic legislation and values. Otherwise, it could become a tool and a resource, which is rather unfortunate. We also have to make sure that we're protecting it from being able to access data, so it's not being used for unethical companies and all sorts of other different agents who are looking to make money off of your prized information.
Thank you.
So because we've had such an enriching discussion, we won't have time to get to all of the questions from our registrants. We did try to integrate some of those questions in our previous questions. The last question comes from the floor. What is your solution to the funding crisis in higher education?
Okay. It's the funding, right? At this moment, only 30% is the funding, which barely covers operational cost. And so that's why post-secondary education institutions had to go to foreign students. So we are going to boost this, and it will be uniform at certain level, but it will be different different funding for the different universities. For example, we don't want that Queens should close their arts section. So there will be a special injection for the Queens to meet with their $35 million deficit. So they should feel comfortable. The similar case would be with the other institutions. We are going to establish 2 new medical schools, by the way, within our health policy. So we are going to boost funding to the medical colleges, existing medical college, so they can add or they can double their existing capacity. So there will be, at least our threshold will be bring Ontario at par with the rest of the Canada, but we will selectively boost funding university to university.
As a former educator, education is obviously something I'm incredibly passionate about, and we've seen it be a budget line that governments, past and present, have always cut and always harms students. With the Ontario NDP, we would restore the $1,500 per student that was cut by Doug Ford since 2018. We would create a school nutrition program because if students are hungry, they cannot learn. But I don't think it's enough to settle for Ontario to be average when it comes to post-secondary funding. We need to undo decades of underfunding and damage and neglect to our system. This is something where there's a proven economic benefit. Every dollar that goes into education yields a $1.4 return. That is a great investment. I think any one of you in this room would probably want to put a bunch of money into that right away. So we have to ask ourselves the question, why is the government not doing it? we see that this current government is really speaking a lot about the trades, which I think are incredibly important, but they're also doing that at the expense of the university system. It should not be one against the other. Different people learn in different ways, and different people have different attributes and different capabilities and different interests and skills. They should be things that are harmonized and are together as options for all students. How much time do I have? No, no.
Yeah.
See, I should have asked. I should have kept going.
So the first thing that we would do is get rid of the performance-based model that is currently happening in the universities. That does not work. That is not how universities work. And we can't be just assuming that there's some kind of market model for universities. That's not what university is about. The second thing, as I did mention before, we will increase the funding to universities by 20% for each of the students that are registered there, as well as tying that to inflation so that it increases over the years. We want to make sure that those investments are there because we have seen 2 universities fail at the moment in Canada, Brescia and Lakehead University. And there are others that likely will suffer the same fate. As that happens in Ontario, that means that Ontario students are going to start looking for other places to go in other provinces. This means that departments will close. It'll often be departments that are smaller, like gender studies. That is a huge loss. So we need to make sure that there is more funding so that the universities and the programs are still there and that Ontario is still competitive and Ontarians and Canadians still want to come here as a world-class educational center.
Thank you very much. Now I'm coming to my closing question. So I want each of you as candidates to imagine that you secure the seat and beat your opponent. After your victory, would you be open to engaging with your opponents to hear their ideas and potentially collaborate with them?
Yes, and I love. When I was at London Transit Commissioner, on my right side, it was the navy blue, and on my left side, it was orange. And I was in between, and I had to get something done. For example, we were talking with the marginalized communities. When we took over, when we was put in the London Transit, there was like a number of people from these communities. And then I had to take them on board that, okay, these are also Canadians. We need to give them some confidence. We need to give them some boost. So they were able to second my proposal, and now there are over 150 people of color in London Transit. Keep in mind, London Transit is not a new agency. It's as old as post 1947, as old as Metropolitan London. So I will, I love, frankly, to talk across the board and take everybody on board, because if there is a win-win, there is a win-win for everybody, for every Londoner. Thanks. Sorry.
It really shouldn't matter the color of shirt that people wear when it comes to getting the job done. I was first approached by an individual from the Child Welfare Political Action Committee, and the first thing that this individual said to me was, "I'm a card-carrying conservative." My response was, "I don't care." So she spoke to me about how folks, children in the Crown Ward system or former foster children, what happens to them when they age out of care. They would receive courses about how to not get pregnant and how to apply for social assistance. How is it that we're setting the bar so low for people who are just beginning their life? So what we did was we met with Brescia University College, Cherin University College, King's University College, and Western, and we were able to secure 35 students who had aged out of care, who were never adopted, who had no family. We got them a free university education. That's the kind of thing that you can get done when you work across party lines. It's the kind of thing that the government should do. You know, I was also proud to fight when the government was going to cut promised funding for Maysville Public School. There were 17 portables. It was the last dying breaths of the government, and Doug Ford was going to cut it, and I fought him, and I got that renovation. Same Eagle Heights, 16 portables. And I was proud to fight to make sure that they got the support that they deserve. It doesn't matter who you work for. Sorry. You just have to cut me off. Don't be more harsh.
So yes, absolutely. I would consult the other candidates that have run. So this is my 5th time running. And I say every single time, Greens will work with any party. They will talk to any party. And the reason why is The best decisions are those decisions that are made together. Our current situation that we have is we often go back and forth in a pendulum swing because of our electoral system. And it means that one party gets in and undoes everything that the other party did, and then vice versa. And they each blame each other. And the problem with that is that we never move forward. We never get anywhere with long-term solutions. It's always in these 4-year gaps. Well, I can tell you with climate change, it doesn't work that way. You can't build anything on 4 years, and you can't do the same with economy. So absolutely, I would reach out to the others. And in fact, when I ran federally, the current MP, Peter Fragascato, said, if I win, I will reach out to Carol, because I run my elections in such a way that I have absolute respect for the other candidates that are there. And he did reach out to me, and I was able to consult with him. Yeah.
My last closing question is, I want each of you to now imagine that you lose this election, but you have the opportunity to work with the winner. What is the top priority of your campaign that you would want to see them act on?
For me, it would be the fundamental aspect of housing. We need to make sure that we are creating deeply affordable housing that is being created by the government, not created by the private market. Private market has come to me, and I've spoken with developers who have said, we don't want to create affordable housing. There's no return on investment. I have to answer to shareholders. They want the government to actually do the heavy lifting to make sure that they're creating that housing and also permanently affordable housing. We should also make sure that there is legislation in place where every new development includes a certain portion of affordable housing. We're talking rent here to income here, people. We're not talking some nebulous definition of what affordable housing is, because when it's 80% of market rent, the market's out of control. 80% of out of control is not okay. And we need to make sure that there is rent control, keep people who are housed.
I think it's probably pretty obvious for me. If it weren't for the Greens, we obviously wouldn't see anything really happening with the environment. All the other parties are going to address the other issues, but only the Greens are really going to push for environmental action. And that is what we need right now at the absolute fundamental core. Because if we don't have a healthy environment, if we don't have clean air to breathe, if we do not have clean water to drink, and if we are currently suffering with extreme weather events such as flooding and forest fires, then we really can't build a strong province. So I would be right there pushing for protecting 30% of our wetlands, protecting 30% of our greenlands, making sure that we have a blue belt and a food belt, and making sure that we are safeguarding the green belt so that it can't be paved over with highways. That would be what I would push for, and I will be pushing for it. I likely won't win, but I will be still pushing for it all the time because it's what I've dedicated my life to for the last 30 plus years.
Okay, thanks. There may be 3 different scenarios, so I will not touch my scenario. So let's say Carol wins. I worked with Carol on TFAC, and at that time, London's canopy was less than 24%. And everybody may know about the Western Fair. I'm governor at the Western Fair, and we deal with the farms and we deal with the farmers all the time. So I will be working with Carol for her all green initiatives, because those are great and that's the futuristic. Now, Terence wins. I love Terence. He's my friend. I mean, there will be Feb 28, by the way. So that's why I always tell my all colleagues, and we should keep good things in front of us. So I will be utilizing my expertise in city management, in the local government, in the transit. I'm a national director for the Transportation Action Canada. And in the health sector, being a president of Cancer Registries Canada, I will give my whole to Terence so he can utilize my services at his disposal.
Thank you.
Oh, you're done. Yeah.
I want to express my gratitude to all 3 of you, Cherin, Carol, Tariq, for being here today, for your time, insight, and thoughtful responses. It's clear that each of you are committed to addressing the important issues facing our province. Regardless of where we stand on the political spectrum, the conversations we've had are invaluable to helping us understand your vision for Ontario's future. We appreciate your willingness to engage with the public and our students, and we look forward to seeing how these discussions will shape the upcoming elections. Thank you once again for your participation. I would ask that you stay behind to accept a token of appreciation on behalf of all. And thank you to everyone who has asked questions and come out today. To collect groceries and get cards for the prizes we were issuing.
Thank you very much. Very pleasant. Oh my God, sorry if I went too long.
You've got 10 seconds and then we don't wrap it up.
You done 3 bites and you just cut the audio.
We kept it on.
That's one of the. Went over. We did record this.
Oh, yeah. Yes, just like it's very. I'm a little bit.
Participants, could I please ask Greg Solis-Reyes, Jess Walsh, Eric Scarfone, and Nuran Albana. Sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly. If the 4 of you could stay behind to collect the grocery gift cards if you're here.
I do.
Yeah.
So we did, whoever registered. We did that.
I know. Thank you so much.
Are you?
I
He's making.
More of a podcast.
I only do. Yeah, so I have a master's in policy side and I teach Yeah, so I enjoy my work like.
We have studio, we have everything. And in biology, I work in yeah, I came back to academia because I was looking at I was with the one for about 5 years. So now I can take 4 years over the time. I also look at I'm looking at where the aquatic environment, particularly the commercial environment, impacts food resources of birds and I'm just stabilized to analyze this question. So I'm finishing my case. Well, I'm hoping to be done in the end of June or beginning of That too. So, oh,